Welcome to another episode of Management Muse. I'm your host, Cindy Baldy, and this is my husband and co-host, Jeffrey Tumlin.
Yellow! Welcome to the podcast where we try to inspire better work performance. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for joining us today on Management Muse. Today we are going to talk about work-life balance.
Yep.
And our guest today,
Jon Calvin. Why we had him on is because he is, in addition to being the CEO of a large healthcare organization in Central Texas, he's also raising two wonderful boys, happily married man, and in his spare time, which he has so much of, he somehow figured out a way to be a competition-level triathlete and much, much more. We've known him for many years. And of all the people we know, he's one of the most balanced, even in spite of one of the most hectic schedules, which is why we wanted to bring Jon Calvin on to drop a few wisdom nuggets on balance in our lives and what managers and what we can do to try to have a little more. So thanks very much for joining us today, Jon.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So let's start with a basic question. How do you do it? How do you manage to do all those things without going crazy and without any of them getting too far out of whack?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm surrounded by an exceptional support system, from my family to coworkers to my board of directors. So that really helps me. We've assembled a great team that works together, and I think without those components, it'd be very difficult to manage the organization and things I'm doing in my personal life. Whenever I actually moved into the CFO role, one of the discussions I had when I had that opportunity was meeting with my wife and saying, these are the expectations and responsibilities of this role. Are you on board with this? Because I will have a demanding schedule. Can we work together to make sure we can succeed in all areas of our life by working together? And the same thing happened again when I moved into the CEO role. So having that buy-in is important, and I really think the support system is the foundation to making that all work.
it actually sounds like you're a master at delegating, which a lot of people aren't.
That's true, and I wouldn't say I've mastered it, but I'm happy to delegate when I can. So, there's always teach people to fish rather than providing the fish. So, I rely heavily on my team in their areas of expertise, and I try to focus on the higher issues I need to work on. So, I think that's part of it, getting good at that, and then really, attention and time management is also critical as well.
Yeah. So I was interested in, I thought it was revealing that the first thing that Jon says is the way he does it is it actually takes a village, so to speak. And so to be a good family man, to have a strong family, to be a competition triathlete, and to run a multi-million-dollar complicated healthcare organization, how many people? What's your number? How many people in what's your support system? Yeah, what's that number?
Well, I would say at work it's critical to have a strong senior leadership team. So I'd say, all the people that I've supervised technically from a direct report relationship, our key C-level, some of our other senior leadership positions. I'd say then my family. So there's probably at least 10 people that I, work closely with all the time.
Yeah.
Even Katrina, our executive assistant.
Yeah.
She really helps with certain aspects of my life as well, with scheduling, all various other things.
She tries to keep everybody organized.
She does. She does a great job.
Yeah, she does.
The glue. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
What does your schedule look like, maybe percentage-wise, and where you're spending your time in a week or a day, however you want to do it?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
Yeah, I'll start by giving you my perspective on balance overall. And I know a lot of people compartmentalize work from life. And it's more of that balancing act or strict trade-offs between work and life. My perspective, I guess I subscribe more to what Jeff Bezos states, and it's really two integrated parts that work in harmony if you get them right. And it's more of a circle than a balancing scale. And I've always seen, all of this work life is just one big canvas that works together. And that's really helped me as, I think I've moved through my career, as I don't see it as one thing or another, but I try to prioritize and get on the schedule all the key items that are important to me with my values. So having time for my family, getting my work done, time for exercise. I try to map those out and really find time and space to do those. So I would say, I try to make exercise as important as eating, making sure I'm fitting that in. I've always had a sports background and really had an interest in exercising, so I think that's a key aspect with being able to be productive, to have high energy, and then just that benefits of longevity and cognitive ability long term, so you can get back and be able to play with your kids when you're older and things like that. So I would say I think I'm fairly analytical, so I think about it in terms of hours of the day. You have 24 hours. Mm-hmm. I sleep about 7 hours a night. That's about the right fit for me. So that gives me 17 waking hours to get all those prioritized tasks done throughout a week. And I try to make time for exercise, eating, family time in the evening, making sure I'm going to sporting events for my kids or other activities. And sometimes you can't make it all work, but that's kind of how I work my schedule out.
Yeah. All right, your turn.
Yeah. I think it's a good question. I have some similarities with John on this. People look at my life because I'm on the road, 240 days a year, something like that.
Yeah, significant.
And every day is a new place, the way my schedule is. I'm seldom in the same place for more than 2 days, so it's constantly movement. And to them, it looks nutty. But to me, it totally makes sense. Like, I'm doing the job I was born to do, and I wake up and I run. And then after I run, I take a shower and go to work. And I work, and then when I'm done working, I eat. And then when I'm done eating, I catch up and get ready for the next day, and I get my 7 hours, 7 hours or so of sleep with a little time to read. And that works for me with, I have a wife who happens to
I'm right
be nearby. And so we know that we have to plan large chunks of time together to make up for the fact that we're together most weekends, but that's still, it starts to add up that there's 5 days a week we're not together and 2 days we are. And so
it's really a day and a half.
Yeah, by the time you come
fly out
and all that.
You get the location for Monday.
Yeah. So the main point that I want to make is something that can look weird and unbalanced, and even sound unbalanced on the outside. What? You're in hotels 250, 270 nights a year, whatever the number is.
Right.
We don't even count anymore. Because if you counted our vacation, it's probably 300. If you counted the vacation days in hotels.
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah. So
we don't have a home, so.
Right. Yeah. So it looks nutty, but to me, it makes perfect sense. And that's something that we wanted to emphasize in this discussion, that John running this huge, complicated organization but making time for his kids and being a triathlete and competing in the stuff, this makes sense to you.
It does.
Yeah.
And, similar to you, I think it's balance is personalized at the individual level.
I still have to go, people.
Yeah, I know. We're just having a little moment here.
Yeah. Well, when I moved into the CEO role, I immediately signed up for an Ironman, and I had no background. And people are like, why are you taking something on of that magnitude when you're a rookie CEO? But it made sense to me. I mean, it may be counterintuitive to some, but when, the stress goes up with the CEO role, my stress reducer is exercise, so I need to crank that up to have balance for myself. And externally it may look out of whack, but internally to me, it actually works.
Yeah, good insight.
Okay.
Yeah.
My turn
we're ready
now?
for it.
Yeah,
we're ready for it.
Okay,
that is
you are actually the focus of this conversation.
That is a highlight. I didn't know that he made CEO and then signed up for an Ironman.
Well, why not? He took another 10 miles on the 70 bike ride.
Oh, that's right.
That was on accident.
I know, but we're not. We're going to tell the story like you did it on purpose.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm almost at the end. I'm going to go
10.
left instead of right.
Yeah, I'll do another 10. Yeah. And the thing was, that was his own. We're talking about a bike race that
Mama Jimba.
Mama Jimba.
That
John's company sponsors. And so it had to be, I mean, can you imagine, and it's nobody's fault, there was road construction, but basically, this is the company is sponsoring this race, your CEO happens to be an athlete, he's actually probably going to win this thing, and there's this error, and it's like, wrong turn, and it's the CEO, and he went 10 miles out of the way.
Did you win still?
I mean, we didn't do times. It's more of an event than a race, but
that means he won.
But yeah, they had to track me down on a motorcycle, and you're miles away from the turn. So it was quite embarrassing, but I got a good workout in.
Yeah.
I think everybody loves the story. I don't think you should be embarrassed about it at all. They're like, he's so tough.
Yeah.
He added on to the race.
That is awesome.
Most people are doing 5 miles, and you're doing the 70 miles path. And then you add on, so it's good. So I think that we do balance in 2 different ways. And I am managing Geoff because Geoff is a maximizer. And so every second has to be utilized. And so there's an adaptation that has to happen for us to work. And so, I strive for 8 hours. I'd like 9, but I'll settle for 8. And that's important to me. Sleep, I think it has to be a priority. And I think what I learned with going through the PhD program with Geoff was the importance of rituals that you will not sacrifice. And so, we would see each other. We were working in the same house. We had our own offices. We might pass each other at lunch. And so we'd work all day, right next to each other, essentially, and never talk. In fact, I did have to lock Geoff out of my room because he'd have an idea, and he'd be like, "I got this idea," and I'd be like, "I'm in the middle of a dissertation,tion," and I finally locked the door so he couldn't come in. And
true
so
story.
yeah, it is true. And but at the end of the day, we knew that we were gonna, watch probably The Shield together at that point in time.
Best TV show ever.
Yeah, that show was awesome, and it took everything to stop watching the episodes. That is a binge.
Yeah.
And so that was something that we wouldn't that had to happen, and then exercise had to happen, and sleep had to happen, and because there's always more to do. And so you're never going to have a clean plate. And so you just decide, these are the things that I'm not going to give. And everything else is just it's not going to matter. 3 hours out of your life when you've been working all day long to do something that's for you, it's not going to matter. And so I think we still do a good job because he's on the road. And so now our ritual isn't The Shield because we're out of, sadly, episodes, but also we're not around each other. We went from being around each other 24 hours, 7 days a week to, a day and a half on weekends.
Yeah.
So what we do now is, at about 9:30, there's a phone call, and then we go over DATE, the acronym for something I discovered, something I achieved, something I'm thankful for, something I experienced, because that helps us have a conversation. And also just kind of cleanses the mind. And then, he has a morning commitment for exercise. I have a commitment for exercise, but it happens whenever I can sneak off. I'm not really big, because I like sleep. I really love sleep. Not really big on getting up painfully to exercise. So, when I get a break in the day, I maybe take, half the time to exercise, and then I go back, do work, and then I finish with another half before he calls. And so, that's what kind of the routine looks like. And it's those things that you can't give. And then we go all out. We work a ton of time and we don't see each other very often. and it's all about work, and then we balance it with, boom, these gaps where we take, 3-week trips somewhere.
Yes.
And
yeah, it works for us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello, management users. Today, I want to tell you a little something about our coaching products. If Lady Gaga and LeBron James both have coaches, why shouldn't you? We offer a variety of packages, all the way from a 12-session package aimed to help you build your management muscle to a 2-session package aimed to help you think through sticky issues and provide you with a second opinion. All our coaches have doctorates in the social sciences and years of real-world experience in business. So stop questioning yourself and pull the trigger. You're worth it. For more information, contact us at culsure.com. That's CULSURE.com.
Your advice for managers for balancing the most important things in their life. Your company has in it dozens and dozens and dozens of managers.
Yeah.
And this podcast is for inspiring better work for managers. And so let's speak to that audience. What would you say, some lessons you have or some wisdom or advice you have for people about managers specifically, about balancing important things?
I would first say, if they haven't already done it, I take a personal inventory of truly what is important to them. What are their values? What are their key things in their life that they want to fit in to their schedule, or, what are their goals going forward? So understanding currently where you're at, where you want to go, and what it will take is critical. So, what we're made up of our habits and the systems we operate under. And I think even just taking a log of your schedule, your nutrition habits, your exercise, your sleep, those things for a couple of weeks is pretty insightful. Even for me, you said you're a maximizer, or actually you said just a maximizer. One of the questions I often ask myself is, what is the best use of my time right now? And if I'm doing something that's wasteful, I try to redirect it to something that's more productive.
Oh, you two are too pleased, no problem.
Yeah.
So I think
Now you know why I like this guy.
I think, even me, sometimes I'll start binge watching Netflix, and some new shows that come out. I'm like, what am I doing right now? But it's usually with my wife, so it's good quality time together. But I think people have more opportunities in their schedules than they may think, realize they have. And they can turn some bad habits into some good habits. And I think there's, people have more capacity than they realize. So try to find space for, prioritizing your key, what's key in your life that you think is important, is get that on the schedule and then fill it in with other things.
Yeah, I think about that a lot with the exercise. Like my sisters are sometimes surprised at the amount of time that I spend exercising, but I'm not watching TV, and I'd rather exercise and have the benefit of that. And so, we sometimes watch TV when we're together, but pretty much there's no just stopping and watching TV. And so I get back all that time, and I put a higher value on the exercise than I do the TV.
Yeah.
So it's figuring out, I think sometimes people don't actually live what they value. So I don't mean it quite like that. They might think that exercise is really important to them, but they're too exhausted to watch, and so they come home and watch TV. But if you say it's really important to you, and I believe you, it's really important to you, then you at least do something maybe mild for movement, because it's just about movement. And so whatever that value hierarchy is, organize your life to fit it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and we're lucky. We should recognize, because this podcast is going out to all kinds of people, is that we have the luxury of having big, robust support systems, and we have healthcare, and we have jobs, and we have if our car broke down, we could fix it.
Right.
And it wouldn't.
Yeah, it doesn't throw a wrench and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can exercise tomorrow because if the car I have breaks down, I don't have to take a bus to work.
Well, and also like the three of us exercise, so we keep going back to exercise.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be exercise. It's whatever it is that you say that you value. Yeah, whatever that priority hierarchy is.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's an element of good fortune embedded in some of what we're talking about.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
You know, the example that comes to mind is how single parents are able to juggle it all with, if they're working, taking care of their family, and they don't have a support system. That's more challenging in those instances for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like that's also part of the advice is when you're thinking about taking on like a job that's going to probably require more of you, then spend the work up front trying to figure out what that looks like, the impact on your life, and who's going to support you doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was nice when John said the big jobs, at least, the C jobs, the CFO and then the CEO, that before you took them, you talked with your wife and kind of got a, basically buy-in at the one of the focal people in the support system. Yeah.
That was important.
Yeah. The managers here, of which we have, well, actually, let's do all employees. What's all ballpark headcount in Lone Star?
Approximately 700.
Yeah, about 700. And so, what are the things that your company, Lone Star, is already doing? And also, what are some things that Lone Star might be able to do better on in the future in encouraging balance in employees? So how are you actually trying to embed some of this in the company you work? Because I know this topic is important to you, and so I know that by extension it's important to the 700 people that make up this company.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, it's difficult. Let's just get off with that. But because we've prided ourselves on hitting high marks on an efficient staffing model, it's especially important that people take the time off that they have. So we have a pretty robust benefits package and time off package. So I think leading by example in taking time off where we can, our employees actually exercising that that pool of funds they have available, that pool of time, is important to actually take the time to recharge. So I saw some posting the other day that said self-care is productive.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that. And recharging the batteries is important. Like you said, you take some vacations. That's good for your quality time together, but probably time to also recharge and be prepared to go back to work.
It's amazing how you get away from things and then all of a sudden you become more creative. Like, the ideas come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're kind of high up on the chain, but I think for managers, every once in a while checking in and making sure your people have actually taken their time off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there also gets to be that kind of and this is throughout the United States, this thing where I can't leave, I can't take my time off.
Yeah.
And you can, and you should. It's part of your pay package.
Yeah, that's weird. It's funny. I think it's getting better every year.
Mm-hmm.
That not old, but that mentality of die at my desk kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that this place will fall apart without me. And my point is, well, if you fall apart and go away unwillingly, is this place going to survive? If the answer is yes, then you can take your vacation.
Yeah.
I think also having a work environment where someone's drowning or redlining, having a culture where they can ask for help and feel comfortable doing that, and really, trying to work as a team to have that support system. Or some of our physicians have had tough times, especially in our OB service line, OB in gynecology, with having sufficient support for our call coverage, things like that. Having the environment where they can reach out and say, hey, look, I'm having these trouble right now. Can we adjust my schedule to do this or that? Provide some more flexibility to make it through a difficult period of time. We try to encourage that and accommodate that where we can. More and more people want flexibility in how they work. It's a little bit harder in healthcare, especially in the clinical setting, of how we make that work. We've had multiple conversations about how can we set this up to be more conducive for our employees. And I think on the employees, on the clinical side, that's just still pretty
It's a
big
challenge because you're seeing people, so your employees have to be there.
What are some of the pitfalls that you see, John, on the road to more balanced living? What are some of the things to be careful? Holes that people can fall into?
Personally, sometimes I'll get too rigid. I'll get in a routine or get hyper-focused on one area, and then I realize I've gone too far in that direction. So sometimes you need some spontaneity, but I get so hung up in my routine. Like I have a morning routine, I want it to be that way, and did knock these things out. So sometimes you have to be more open. I've had some of my most growth opportunities through those periods where it was difficult situations where I wasn't necessarily balanced. Like the most pronounced moment of being imbalanced, it wasn't really public accounting. It was going through a restructuring at this organization in 2014 when I had the opportunity to move into the CFO role. And there was a 6-month stretch where we were working 7 days a week, and I had some 18 to 20-hour days.
7 days a week?
Yeah, I'd at least be doing something. I mean, on the weekends, sometimes it was just a half day or something like that, but I was at least doing something from home. So.
And that was survival time.
That was survival time.
The organization was actually in jeopardy if we don't figure out how to turn this around and restructure this thing. Yeah.
But during, that accelerated my opportunity into the CFO role. I learned more about business and life during that period than any other period. And it's, fortunately it all worked out, and we were able to help our patients to have the healthcare access they needed, and also keep many of our employees on board. So
part of the reason we want to try to strive for weeks and months of balance is for in those opportunities when we actually have to be out of balance, that we have the reserves to draw on.
It's punctuated equilibrium.
Right,
yeah.
So there's a concept, and it's actually, I think it came out of like the evolutionary research. So I think it's like more like a actual biology type theory, but it got applied in management.
Huh.
And so what it is that people can't have chaos for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And so, but at the same time, every day an organization exists and is stable, it's actually moving out of sync with its environment. And so you go for a long period of time and, the organization's moving in one direction and the environment's going this way. And if the gap gets big enough where you punctuate it and you basically rapidly change the organization, you shake everything up and do it as fast as you can, because you got to get people back to the equilibrium. And it's just a series of doing that to try to basically keep an organization from, falling fatally out of sync with the environment.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and we talk a lot about that. We talk about organizations, surge, pause. And if we've had a lot of surge, how do we pause? How do tomorrow there's still going to be, how many patients a day on average coming to Lone
We have several thousand.
Yeah, thousands.
We serve
tomorrow.
Yeah, we do over 350,000 visits per year.
So
30,000 visits per month.
Yeah, so 1,000 people coming, or more than 1,000, 1,500, whatever the number is.
Yeah.
There's tomorrow, they're coming. And so we can't all be on vacation, right? And people can't all be, I'm going to, get my balance tomorrow. So how do we keep that, keep an organization rejuvenating itself, replenishing itself, while we are going to be serving our patients every day?
I think that's a huge challenge too, because the world moves to the school system calendar.
That was highlighted by the pandemic.
And if everybody wants the same weeks off.
Yeah. And so how did you feel that acutely in this company?
So a lot of our employees have kids in school, childcare, elementary, and so on. So when they were out of school, they didn't have no childcare. I mean, so that was major in various industries felt that.
Yeah.
But there's such a tie-in with the school system. for being able to conduct those.
We tried to zig when other people are zagging, or zag when
other people are zigging,
and get off of like the school system like calendar in terms of like our trips. Couldn't do it because nobody. We would be willing to work, but nobody's around.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so you basically. Here are two people. We don't have kids. We're willing to go off season,
own our own consulting business,
and we're forced onto the school system calendar.
Can't do it.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to work, and then when we would be on vacation, everybody wants to work.
Yeah.
And so we're just like everybody. We go on vacation at the most expensive time.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah, even non-pandemic.
Yeah.
People want to take off in line with school.
Yeah.
Hello, Management Musers. Today, I want to talk to you about executive team building. Our executive team building products help open the lines of communication so you and your core leadership team can smartly talk and think through thorny issues. We offer multi-session packages aimed to open up the minds and the mouths of those around you. So email or call us today at ondemandleadership.com.
Let's talk role models, John. Who's been a role model in your life for balanced living?
I'd say one that comes to mind around balance is James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, because he actually breaks it down in a practical way of switching from bad habits to good habits, and he really stresses the importance of having the right systems in place. I've always been very goal oriented, but having the right system in place is even more important. And what I mean by that, I'll give you an example of, being a triathlete versus an Ironman. I wanted to achieve that in that type of in an Ironman by completing a difficult task. But really, I want to be a triathlete. And to do that, you have to continue to keep training. You just don't hit the Ironman and quit. You have that system in place to achieve that by waking up early in the morning, being consistent in doing that, and putting everything in place in your life that supports that. So
I'm sure there may be one or two listeners who aren't triathletes.
Mm-hmm.
So
probably almost all of them.
Yeah. Tell them
including me.
Yeah. Tell them what the difference is between triathlete and Ironman, so that they can put in the context that insight did.
Yeah, so I see, becoming an Ironman, that's an event, so it's put on by a company called Ironman. So if you accomplish, a full distance Ironman is swimming 2.4 miles, riding a bike for 112 miles, and then running a full marathon 26.2. So the goal is achieving Ironman.
Okay.
And you have to do your training to get there, but once you achieve that, you may be done. You hit your goal.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a triathlete, which means I want to get good at all those disciplines, swimming, biking, and running, and continue to do that. And I need reinforcing habits and systems I build into place to support that going forward. So that can be applied to anything, being a runner instead of just completing a marathon. I use a lot of sports analogies, but various other areas.
I was thinking about it's doing stand-up. I don't want to just do an open mic night in Boston. I want to be a stand-up comic.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So focusing more on systems than goals, he stresses the importance.
I think it's an identity.
It is.
Because, completing the Ironman, well, that's completed. It's something that you've done. Being a triathlete is who you are.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a good way of thinking about it.
Yeah.
What has surprised you most on your path to seeking more balanced living?
That I still haven't achieved balance. It's really not a destination. It's something you have to continue to work on over time. And again, as I reflected on the discussion on balance, there are these periods of imbalance, and that's normal. I also think, balance is more individualized to each of us. So you need to figure out what works for you.
Yeah.
And like we talked about earlier, externally they may think you're out of balance and don't see how you can do that, but if you're perfectly aligned internally.
Yeah. I think those are some important big points for this episode that we've talked about. But if I can summarize some of them here, you're always working on balance.
It's a process.
Yeah, it's a process. It may look goofy on the outside, but if it's working for you in your kind of core support structure, then it's working. There used to be a saying in the Army, some basic version of, if it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid. And so I'm kind of reminded of that. And then the other piece is that we may have role models, when we should, for things like, hey, he can do it, I can do it, she can do it, I can do it. But exactly how we achieve balance is going to be different. It's going to be individualized.
Yeah, no, that's good. And other people I look at, I mean, that's just an author of a book, but like actual seeing it lived out on a daily basis. I can see different, on both sides of the spectrum, I'm not supporting everything he does, but Elon Musk, just his capacity to get things done and how many different companies he operates, pretty incredible. I wouldn't say he's balanced, but it just demonstrates how much capacity you really have. And then, Adam Grant, who, talks about the importance of having balance and has really good practical advice with evidence supporting it. So, I mean, I look at both ends, and I think you need to see both perspectives and find out what works for you. But one of the other surprises is just really how much capacity I found out that I really have. And I think others can find that too by really assessing their schedule, seeing, making sure they can fit in what's important to them.
Yeah.
Going through that process.
Yeah. It's a tough insight for people to take, right? Because everybody feels busy.
Yeah.
And they feel like they need to break it, but I get why people watch TV, so I'm not criticizing people who watch TV, but they're doing it to get a break, but it's also a passive activity that doesn't actually recharge you. So it's almost like a little bit of a vicious cycle on the TV front.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's a good point. I think if people periodically logged where their time was going and wrote down their priorities, they might see that they're out of sync.
What other wisdom do you have to share about this topic that we've bitten a big chunk out of tonight?
Yeah, I actually have a list of items, and we can double click down into any of the items, but I just wanted to give you some quick items that I think are beneficial to supporting a balanced life. And one is wake up early to get ahead. It's much easier to protect your time when most people are sleeping.
Yeah.
If you can adapt to that, if you're not a night owl. Prioritizing your sleep, like you mentioned, Cindy, that's an area I could actually improve in, is getting quality sleep. But it's so important to energy and focus and all the other aspects of life. Prioritizing your health, the value of nutrition in your life, and having a healthy lifestyle really makes a difference in if you feel balanced or not. Using a daily to-do list, I try to do a list at the end of the day for the next day, and that helps me kind of shut off. Focus on work overnight.
Yeah.
It also helps you not waste time in the morning trying to figure out what you should be doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Work on your hardest problems requiring critical thinking when you're the freshest. That's typically the morning for me. You can fact check this because you have all the evidence behind it.
So far, so good.
But this works for me.
So far, so good.
Don't be afraid to delegate or ask for help when you're struggling. Consistency is key. There'll be good and bad days, but trying to be even keeled to the extent possible, and having consistent performance really helps, especially as you move up in an organization. And then take advantage of opportunities via other duties as assigned in your job description, especially early in your career. It's good, especially later on when you become really busy, to be able to say no to things that aren't a good fit for your schedule, or trying to keep that balance, but really trying to take advantage of being proactive at learning different areas within the organization. People complain about other duties as assigned, saying that's not in my job description, but sometimes that's the greatest opportunity. So taking advantage of those opportunities helps. Finding role models for balanced living, the place balanced trail is important. Surrounding yourself with good people. There's discussion of you're made up of the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with.
Well, I kind of like that.
That explains some of the blending together that we've had.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're starting to do some math. Yeah, so
And then the last one is you really never stop learning, trying to maintain a growth mindset. There was an interview of Lewis Hamilton, the F1 race car driver, living legend, where he met with Nelson Mandela, and he was 90 years old at the time, and he asked him for advice, and he said, I'm 90 years old and I'm still learning. So, when you think about that with your lifespan, I'm approximately, if I make it to the mortality rates in the U.S. For men, I'm about halfway through my life, and I have an entire half a life left to learn and grow, and trying to take advantage of that is important. So not becoming complacent would be my advice.
As we make our conclusions, last chance. Anything else you want to add about this topic, balance, or anything else? The floor is yours before we wrap this whole thing up.
I think we covered a lot of ground on the topic, so I just appreciate you all having me on the podcast.
It's our privilege. Thanks to Jon Calvin, helping us think through balance, trying to get as much of it as we can without sacrificing the things that work for us. Anything else you want to add, Doug?
No, I think we've covered it.
Yep. All right. Thanks to Jon Calvin. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Management Muse. We will see you next time, as always. Don't forget to like, love, or anything else that makes you happy. We appreciate it. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again for joining us on The Management Muse. We appreciate likes, stars, downloads, shares, and subscriptions. For more information on the resources that help us generate this content, check out the reference material in our show notes. Special thanks to Rebecca Henley, Abby Ariano, and Ariel Villafane. Thank you. See you next time.